You guys ever have a video that the more you think about it, the less you like? Well, that describes what happened to me regarding Just Stop's video on Rick and Morty that came out early last year. Now, I should make it known that I am a fan of Rick and Morty. However, that is not why I dislike this video. As mentioned before, I had watched this video several times, and usually found it to be perfectly fine, even if I disagreed with it. However, then I started really thinking about the claims that Just Stop was making, and found several issues. The video in question sees Just Stop going through each season of Rick and Morty one by one and talking about their various qualities. And regarding seasons 1 and 2, I don't have much to say. I will point out it's a tad odd that Just Stop uses the word says while talking about how Rick's use Morty brainwaves as a cloaking device.
He even has instances of actively trying to push Morty's affection away, like in 110, where he says that he uses Morty's stupidity as a cloak to hide from the government.
As if that were something Rick just said to be mean and not an aspect of the universe the series takes place in? Fuck, later in that same episode, we see the villains actively torturing a large amount of Mortys specifically for the purpose of cloaking.
Why would somebody do this? It's horrible!
Well, one Morty's enough to hide from the bureaucrats, but you get a whole matrix of Mortys and put them in agonizing pain. That creates a pattern that can hide even from other Ricks, motherfucker.
Although Rick does specifically tie it into stupidity in a way to be hurtful later on when he's having an argument with Morty.
You know what, Rick? I'll tell you something. I'm more than a human shield.
Yeah, that's right. You are. You're a perfect impenetrable suit of human armor, Morty, because you're as dumb as I am smart. Which is why when I say, shut up, it's really good advice.
That wasn't an attempt to push Morty's affection away. That was because he was trying to get Morty to shut up while they were trying to sneak through Evil Rick's lair. He snapped and said something he didn't mean out of anger. It's incredibly common. Just Stop also gives this incredibly bizarre analysis of Big Trouble in Little Sanchez.
To that extent, in episodes like 207, you see how desperately Rick longs to be a part of some in-crowd or social group, regardless of if he has to do something dumb like turn himself into a kid. You see how he can only fit into most crowds for a short amount of time partying and having fun, because when the party ends, no one really wants to be around him, which might explain why he's often so closed off to the idea of friendship or love and only shows it when he feels the most comfortable.
And while I do agree those are aspects of Rick's character, they aren't shown in 207. Rick didn't become Tiny Rick so he could go to high school and become popular, but so that he could go to high school and hunt vampires because he was bored.
What up, my Helsings? Who wants to hunt a vampire?
Rick? How did you...
Yeah, I got bored and then I remembered this morning how I blew summer off and I thought, hey, why are you such a grumpy douche, Rick? Go to the garage, transfer your mind into a younger clone of yourself, and get embroiled in some youthful hijinks. What's the BFD? So here I am. I'm Tiny Rick.
We also just don't know exactly how well liked Rick would have been if he had stayed in this setting, although he did still seem to be very popular when Summer got him expelled, if the reaction of the other students is anything to go by.
Summer, I thought you were cool.
I'm sorry, okay?
Oh my god, Morty. Your sister crossed Tiny Rick? Talk about self-destructive.
However, these are both minor issues. Then he starts talking about season 3 and he gets a lot wrong. And fair warning, I'm going to have to play some rather lengthy clips to make these points. But just know they're for the purpose of context. So, let's begin.
But I'd say the problem started long before 303, all the way back at the season premiere, the Rick Shank Rickdemption. Having just described the intricate details and theming behind 210, you should have some adequate context for where we left off in the story that this episode is picking up from. And I'm sorry, but whenever I look at this, all I can see is something that wasn't made with a prior plan in mind. Just look at Rick's motivation described in the episode. In-universe, he explains that his reasoning for turning himself in was to take down the galactic government from the inside, and in the process kick Jerry out of the family.
I should note that Just Stop is taking what Rick says way more at face value than we as the audience are really supposed to. It is true Rick does say these are his underlying motivations while talking to Morty at the end of the episode.
First thing that's different, no more Dad, Morty. He threatened to turn me into the government, so I made him and the government go away.
However, it's very likely those behind the show did not mean for us to take this rant literally, given it eventually devolves into Rick saying his entire motivation for doing anything is finding Szechuan sauce.
And I'll go out and I'll find some more of that Mulan Szechuan teriyaki dipping sauce, Morty. Because that's what this is all about, Morty. That's my one-armed man. I'm not driven by avenging my dead family, Morty. That was fake. I'm driven by finding that McNugget sauce. I want that Mulan McNugget sauce, Morty. That's my series arc, Morty. If it takes 9 seasons, I want my McNugget dipping sauce, Szechuan sauce, Morty. That's what's gonna take us all the way to the end, Morty. 9 more seasons, Morty.
And given this is the same episode where Rick injected the code for a virus into a fake backstory of his...
Whoa, is that it? The portal code?
Yeah, that's the 3 lines of math that separates my life as a man from my life as an unfeeling ghost.
Awesome possum. Mission Control, you getting this?
Holy shit, yes! Yes, we got it!
Thanks, Rick. I'll try to remember to shut off the brainalyzer. Actually, I think it shuts off automatically once your brain is liquid. Don't know, don't care. Pull me out. Hey, pull me out. Can you hear me?
Nope, they cannot.
Why not?
Because the code you just uploaded wasn't actually my portal gun formula. It was a virus giving me full control over the brainalyzer.
What are you talking about? This is a memory. You can't alter details of a memory.
True, but you can alter anything you want about a totally fabricated origin story.
It's clear that Rick is willing to alter parts of his backstory or motivation for whatever fucking reason he wants. In fact, I'd argue part of the point of that story beat in the episode is to inform the audience that we are not going to know much about Rick's backstory or motivations until a later date. I should note that Just Stop goes on to criticize the Season 5 finale for revealing that the Season 3 backstory was actually canon. I personally didn't mind this because I assumed that Rick only pretended like it was fake in order to mislead those around him. He's revealing it begrudgingly in the first place, remember? So obviously he's going to pretend like something he doesn't want to share isn't the truth, even if it is. Now, Just Stop has a great response to this argument. He just kind of says no.
At the same time, though, there could be an argument made that Rick acting like that backstory was a joke could be part of the facade he's putting on mentally, acting like he doesn't care to hide the pain. The thing is, though, that explanation is entirely retrospective and sounds incredibly ass-pully, so I don't find it satisfactory. And Rick clearly didn't show any fucking emotions about it one way or another after Morty sees, so the theory seems all the more unlikely.
Now, the first part doesn't actually prove anything on its own. It's just Stop going, well, it sounds ass-pully. Okay, do you have an actual argument as to why that is? However, the second half, where he claims that Rick didn't get emotional when Morty learned about it, can actually be explained rather easily. You see, Just Stop, they were in the citadel of Rick's at the time as it was literally fucking collapsing. Rick, once again, only begrudgingly gave Morty that backstory once Morty made it clear he was not going to trust anything Rick said unless he promised answers.
So did you help build the Citadel? Did you just lie to me about everything?
Can't we just sneak through the cave base? We turned a new leaf, Morty. We're back to simple adventures.
It's not a new leaf until you tell me everything.
Morty, we really don't have time for this. The whole place is gonna blow.
No, I don't trust you. I don't want to do this anymore if I'm not gonna get straight answers from you.
God damn it. Here's my fucking downloaded brain, Morty. You wanna jump the shark? You wanna know my stupid crybaby backstory? Knock yourself out. Not now!
Actually, while I'm here, Just Stop really didn't get the Season 5 finale. It starts with forgetting Sarah Marshall, where he makes this incredibly strange comment.
So, how did we get to 509? Where a mental patient who appears here and nowhere else can plainly tell that Rick and Morty's relationship is abusive and unfair.
Now, first off, Just Stop mentioning this character doesn't appear anywhere else is just strange. Why would that matter exactly? Why is that inherently a worthwhile quality to mention? Now, as for how this character came to the conclusion that Rick and Morty were in a toxic relationship, he really didn't. The first thing this character says to Morty is that he was screwed over by Rick.
How do you know Rick?
Look, I came to your place with him one night after the bar closed. I started messing around in your garage and I spilled that portal stuff on me and he kind of launched me to Australia, like with this weirdly primitive catapult. But
The ammunition is an airtight carbon chamber. Yeah, that's how we lost our cable guy.
Although later on in the episode, he reveals he actually wanted to use Rick as his ticket to be more than what he currently was, and is now attempting to use Morty to do the same.
What the hell, man? I thought we were both victims of Rick's abuse.
Maybe we are, maybe we're not. Maybe we both just drink at the same bar, and maybe one night I tried to take his portal gun. See, I thought Rick was my ticket to something special, but it turns out you were, Morty. And look at me now. I'm a portal boy.
Basically, it's made clear this guy doesn't really think anything about Rick and Morty's relationship and is just telling Morty what he thinks he would want to hear in order to use him as a means to an end. I note this because Just Stop goes on and on about how, yeah, this guy is right regarding seasons 3 through 5, but not regarding seasons 1 through 2.
With that in mind, all I can think when watching 509 is that it's a culmination of someone trying to deconstruct the toxicity of the last few seasons without taking into account the first few seasons, since if they did, that deconstruction would end up turning to dust and blowing away in the wind, unable to ever be reconstructed. Basically, when put into the context of only season 3 through season 5, it does have some bearing and a point to make, but when put into context of the entire series, it only illustrates the ultimate representation of everything that went wrong with the series along its gradual fall into inconsistency.
But that's not actually as important as Just Stop thinks it is. This guy isn't actually trying to make a valid point about Rick and Morty's relationship. He's just trying to drive Morty away from Rick so he can take advantage of Morty. That's it. All that matters is it is something Morty would reasonably want to hear, regardless of how accurate the statement turns out to be. As for 510, Just Stop notes that very little actually changed for both Rick and Morty after Rick went off to have adventures with the two crows.
The ending of 509 made it clear this was a change Rick and Morty both needed to truly be happy, and yet, here we are, seeing them get back together in the next episode. We barely saw what Rick's life had become before being taken out of it, and in 5010, after getting back with Morty, he doesn't seem any better than he was before. So I guess the main reason for their split happening didn't make either of them better at all.
But that's part of the point. Rick went with the crows under the impression they were enlightened creatures who would teach him. However, when he learned they viewed him as nothing more than a rebound partner, he basically went back to Morty in hopes of forgetting what he just did, treating it like a rather embarrassing episode. Just Stop also complains that we don't get to see how evil Morty being elected president of the Citadel changed it.
In a similar fashion, we don't get to linger on how the Citadel has changed with evil Morty as the new president, which could have also been its own episode. Instead, right as our duo gets to the Citadel, evil Morty out of nowhere already knows the two are there and preemptively invites them to dinner as soon as they arrive.
Which, first off, why would that benefit the series? Just Stop doesn't say why that's actually important enough to dedicate an episode to. All he says is, we don't get to see it. Well, we don't get to see a lot of things. Why is this specifically important? Also, it's implied that evil Morty didn't change the Citadel very much and in fact tried to keep a low profile. Hence why the Ricks were so surprised when he engaged in his, well, evil actions. Oh, there's also this part.
After Evil Morty reveals this whole selection process for the R+M we follow, Rick is questioned on whether he'd have gone back to Morty if the crows didn't leave him, and he's shown not knowing how to answer that question. All I have to say to that is bullshit. So writers, you're telling me that Rick had no attachment to the Morty he was with, and that he'd be willing to trade them in for a pair of crows any day. Have you fucks ever watched the first 2 seasons? Genuine question.
Not just a pair of crows, though. A pair of crows that Rick viewed as wise and enlightened, and he believed would teach him how to be a better person. You are stripping away anything except the most basic aspects of what happened in order to make this sound as ridiculous as possible. Anyway, I apologize for going on as long as I did. It's just, wow, there were a lot of issues there that I wanted to mention. Let's get back to season 3.
And sure, to an extent you can reason that he also has the underlying idea of helping the Smiths, as he didn't need to save Summer and Morty when they came looking for him and got caught by the Citadel of Ricks, but even under that assumption, there are so many questions to raise. First, the idea of taking down the government from the inside is completely separate from the motivations he was shown to have in 210 on a technological level. Sure, in 210, the galactic government was able to find him and his friends after years of hiding and fighting against them, but it's not like Rick wasn't always wanted by the galactic government since episode 1. With that in mind, considering Bird Person mentions how he, Rick, and tons of their friends have been wanted by the galactic government for so long, why didn't Rick go through the whole process of turning himself in way earlier? I mean, when Rick says why he wanted to get rid of Jerry, which I'll get into later, what was it he said? We've got adventures to go on, Morty, just you and me, and sometimes your sister and sometimes your mom, but never your dad. You wanna know why, Morty? Because he crossed me. Considering that quote comes from the series premiere, I should ask, why didn't Rick destroy the galactic government a long time ago so they'd get off his back end? I don't know. Bird Person and several of his implied friends wouldn't have died and spent so long having the potential to die while fighting them? Rick takes down the government like it's just another day, and he accomplishes it swiftly in a single episode, so how come he didn't do it earlier with just how many times they crossed him?
The entire time that clip was playing, I just kept thinking because Rick never felt like he needed to. Yes, the galactic government had been a continuous hindrance to him throughout the series. However, they were never really any threat to him. He was always one step ahead and as such did not have to worry about them too much. Especially given Rick's home planet was not under their control until the end of Season 2, meaning he always had a place that wasn't under their jurisdiction where he felt they couldn't get to him, essentially. An idea which appeared to be correct throughout the series, given the galactic government did not even make an appearance in the show until the Season 2 finale. The death of Bird Person, however, made Rick finally realize that these people were an active threat to him, his way of life, and the people he cared about, and made him finally decide to topple that empire. You mention how easy it was for him to do so, and it's implied that this is a large reason as to why he wouldn't have, because he always assumed that if the situation called for it, he could just do it really easily anyway. Therefore, again, they never presented any form of danger to him. But the events of the Season 2 finale taught him that even a force he could easily defeat can still do a lot of damage to him and those around him if they aren't dealt with. Hence why he decides to be proactive for the sake of himself and those he cares about.
It's been stated that Rick and the government don't mix because he values freedom above everything else and dislikes being controlled, so why would he ever leave himself in a position where a big power he could easily topple might find a way to take away his freedom and, I must reiterate, kill his closest friends?
Because he didn't realize he was in such a position until the death of Bird Person. He didn't know Tammy worked for the galactic government, nor did that possibility even cross his mind.
That's not the only plot hole for this episode either. Considering the original implications of Rick turning himself in was so the Smiths could have a normal life away from him and the people after his head, to the point he basically says as much in 210, why would he then spend the next episode actively getting out of that same prison?
Because while getting out of the prison, he's going to take down the entire galactic government, aka the people he's specifically trying to protect his family from.
His actions in this episode actively destroy what his character arc was coming to at the end of Season 2, because he's not taking responsibility for anything, and instead going off on this plan that seems to completely disregard what could happen to his family because of it. That was the whole reason for the climax of the second season! Rick understanding that his reckless actions have a negative impact on his family, and that nothing good can come from him getting them harmed while running from the consequences of his actions. It was about him taking accountability for his choices and not pushing it onto the people he loves when it could destroy them.
Yeah, reckless actions like, oh, I don't know, not doing anything about the galactic government that hates you and wants to kill you, which you could easily topple, and running from your problems? You mean like running and hiding on Earth, specifically in hopes the galactic government doesn't find where you live and doesn't harm you and those around you, as opposed to going after them head on? I don't see where the contradiction is, Just Stop. I'm sorry, I really don't.
And obviously at the end of 210, there was still plenty of room for growth in Rick's character and everyone around him, because while him turning himself in does keep the Smiths away from trouble, they're still left miserable because Rick is running away from his issues instead of confronting them, choosing to push his family away once again, though this time under the pretense of wanting them to be safe.
Running away from his problems by literally going to the group of people who were the cause of his most recent problems and getting rid of them. Just Stop. Did you and I even watch the same fucking show?
We get a small glimpse into what life under them is like for Earth and the Smiths, but once again, that time spent is so short that we can't have an adequate view of what the galactic government is truly like, and why Rick might even want to go against them.
You already stated why Rick wants to go against them. Your exact words were...
It's been stated that Rick and the government don't mix because he values freedom above everything else and dislikes being controlled. I will say that Beth and Jerry splitting up is probably one of the only things this season opener does right, at least in concept. I kinda dislike how Rick basically splits them up himself when previously he made it clear that he didn't want to interfere with their marriage, even attempting to help it in the past by setting them up with couples therapy. Plus, it seemed like Jerry's words were part of what originally made Rick want to give himself up, agreeing with his sentiment. But then again, the motivations are all topsy-turvy for plot convenience anyway, so, what the fuck ever.
Yeah, Rick did try to help Beth and Jerry's marriage before Jerry crossed him, at least in Rick's mind. And Jerry's words were one of the reasons why Rick turned himself in, so he could take down the galactic government and in the process get Beth and Jerry to divorce each other.
I'd also argue that 301 was the beginning of Morty's inconsistent downward spiral into either being a regular teen like he was in earlier seasons, or more often than not, starting from this episode, a complete cynical asshole. It's another topic for later, but I just brought it up to mention that in this episode, Morty shoots Rick thinking he's actually killed him with no remorse because Rick called Morty stupid.
While being yelled at by two other people, one of which being his sister, and told that he essentially just caused himself, his sister, and Rick to die. Forgot to mention that part.
That's enough! Drop the gun, Rick! Morty, I know you're too stupid to get this, but you're really fucking this up right now. I'm not letting you let my sister die! Drop the gun! I wasn't gonna let her die, you fucking moron! Ha!
Aww.
Point is, he thought I was going to. I totally did, by the way. You're a fucking moron, Morty.
Morty, you fucking idiot!
You're a serious fucking idiot, Morty. You basically killed us all. You're as dumb as a bag of sand. Idiot, Morty. You're Rick has the dumbest thing I've ever laid eyes on. Idiot, dumb Morty. What an idiot! What a dumb Morty.
You claim this makes Morty an asshole. I say it just means he can't handle pressure all that well, especially when the stakes are as high as he thought they were, and especially after he just heard that he ruined the chances of him and Rick succeeding.
Season 3, Episode 1 of Rick and Morty introduced the concept of Rick being
the smartest man in the universe.
He's more like a demon or a super fucked up god.
To give a brief summary before entering this bullshit, the concept I'm referring to is pretty self-explanatory. Though some casual viewers might not remember if it was like this from the beginning or not, it is pinpointively provable that characters outside of Rick himself,
I'm not the nicest guy in the universe. Because I'm the smartest.
Began calling him the smartest person in the universe,
The smartest mammal in the galaxy.
during the Season 3 premiere and no sooner. And it is the most bullshit thing to ever come out of the Season 3 writing room. First, looking at it from a purely logical perspective in the context of the last two seasons, something I'm sure the writers who came up with this idea didn't take the time to do, it already makes no sense. Going back to 106, Rick Potion number 9, he makes a mistake in causing everyone to lust after Morty like rodents in heat. Then, to try to compensate for that, he uses mantis DNA, since by his logic, mantises have bad mating habits, but that just leads to horny mantis people. So he tries to fix that, and then Rick and Morty's universe is completely full of Cronenberg versions of everyone. Tell me, do you think the smartest man in the universe will be able to make such a basic mistake as mixing up scientific ideas with logical fallacies that don't work when thought of on a deeper level?
I mean, maybe, given Rick was in a bit of a rush in that situation, and as such didn't really have the time to think about these ideas on a deeper level. But even ignoring that, what is this supposed to prove? Rick can't be the smartest man in the universe because he occasionally makes mistakes? But intelligence has nothing to do with amount of mistakes made. Intelligent people can still screw up. In fact, research has found that intelligent people are more likely to make mistakes than less intelligent people.
How about 103, in which he had a guy dying of various diseases? Shouldn't the smartest man in the universe have a failsafe for dealing with something so easily foreseeable?
Again, being the smartest man in the universe wouldn't inherently mean he has perfect foresight all the time in every situation. Fuck, strategic foresight and competitive intelligence are even considered to be different things by psychologists. So yes, Rick could be the smartest man in the universe and have bad foresight.
Oh, and we can't forget about 206. Oh my god, 206, the Ricks must be crazy, annihilates the concept of Rick being smarter than anyone else by its very inception. To not take up too much time explaining it, Rick has to go in his car battery when it stops working, which he's made a small universe inside of to operate machines that give him most of the power. But another scientist in that self-contained world has actually made his own battery of the same idea, and they go inside that box and find yet another guy attempting to do the same. The point is, by making a self-contained world in a box where society can thrive, eventually Rick is faced with minds that develop to be just as intelligent as him, with the ability to think on a similar brainwave despite their universe being made to do nothing more than power his car. When the other scientist discovers his purpose to Rick, the two of them have a sort of mental dick measuring contest in which Rick only wins by a hair in basic hand-to-hand combat. As a whole, it shows that man will always have a way of recreating different versions of more convenient processes, and if we think only people like us can do it, we're in for a shocking surprise. There's also some great dark comedy of being forcibly trapped into an endless cycle of labor or dying, but the bit to focus on here is that Rick met people who were just as smart as he was. That's the point of that particular episode. I guess we might as well count it as non-canon though, since that's the only way this episode can work on a canonical level.
Okay, you read way deeper into that episode than was actually intended, and it's incredibly obvious because nowhere is it stated that this scientist is as smart as Rick, just that he managed to do one thing that Rick also did. We have no idea how he did it, how long it took him to do it, if he did so in a more or less intelligent way than Rick did, if he did so in a more or less efficient way than Rick did, and so on and so forth. Anything beyond this scientist also created a microverse is just speculation on Just Stop's part, which he's treating as canon. Anyway, Just Stop goes on to talk about how Rick becomes more overpowered in Season 3, and that is a complaint I do completely agree with, but he still makes a few mistakes.
In 303, Rick is able to turn himself into a pickle, then finding a way to make a full suit of body armor out of rat parts with an endless supply of ammo, yet he's also so brain dead that he can't do something as basic as not having the serum to turn him back precariously placed over him with a Rube Goldberg machine anyone would notice.
But not anybody would notice it. Morty just noticed it when the family left for family therapy, and he had been in the garage with Rick for the longest, meaning he had the most time to notice it. Just Stop brings this up again later, by the way, and says,
I could assert that it'd be easier for him to make a new serum as the smartest man in the universe, or that he could have had a backup serum in the first place since having a plan B seems like an obvious thing someone with basic intelligence would do.
Now, I've already talked about how intelligence and foresight aren't the same thing, so I'm not going to cover that again. Instead, I'm just going to ask, how exactly do you expect a pickle who could not fight back against a cat, might I add?
Oh, great. Stupid cat. Whoa, 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 whoa! I know what it looks like to you, Izzy, but I'm not a snake. I've seen the YouTube videos. I know cats are scared of cucumbers and pickles because they think they're snakes. I'm not a snake. I'm a pickle. I'm a pickle. Whoa, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa.
To do something as complicated as make a scientific serum which would morph him from pickle to human.
So throughout the episode, Rick has kept himself from airing out his issues, instead going on a violent rampage with scientific machines he probably shouldn't have been able to create.
Unlike serums which turn him from pickle to human, those he should have been able to make really easily, apparently.
And weirdly, he mentions YouTube, cat videos, Reddit, and more, like, why would he look at these things? Rick is stated in Season 2 to be an 80-year-old man, though in Season 3 they go back on that and say he's 70. Am I to believe that he watches cat videos and looks at Reddit?
Just stop! You do know old people use the internet too, right? According to one survey, 3/4 of people 65 or older use the internet as of 2021. Anyway, that's all I have to say regarding how Just Stop talks about Season 3, and unsurprisingly, I have a few issues with how he talks about Seasons 4 and 5 as well. So let's just go through those real quick.
Morty being the one to get Rick killed with little regard for him, not even trying to bring him back in service of going after Jessica as love interest.
And because Morty has a death crystal, which tells him that if he brings Rick back, he'll die during one of the adventures he goes on with Rick.
406 relies on the premise of showing any potential follow-up episodes to previous stories and shitting on continuity. Gee, do you think maybe the writers have some hang-ups about the Rick Lantis mix-up being so beloved?
Dan Harmon was thrilled with how liked the Rick Lantis mix-up was. What are you talking about?
In 403, he's got anti-booby trap armor that protects against all traps.
Okay, this is supposed to be seen as another way Rick is overpowered. However, this just looks like common sense to me. Yeah, if you're going to go to a place where booby traps might exist, you should probably create something that would make you resistant to them if that's an option. It just seems like Rick exercised the most basic logic.
405, he's got a weapon that can pause people instantly for seemingly as long as he wants.
That's not even a new idea for the show. Rick did manage to create a device that stopped all of time back in season 1, remember? So why wouldn't he also be able to create a device which freezes certain people in place for as long as he wants?
Oh, and did I mention magic got introduced in the show? Like, actual magic that is stronger than science, which Rick is able to harness and use to his benefit way more easily. But then he decides to not use it ever again for no reason, besides saying magic actually sucks because he had a weird dragon orgy. Even if this Rick decides he doesn't want to use it, why hasn't there been any other Rick or Morty that did? Why hasn't the Citadel switched to a magic system when it would greatly benefit them all and grant infinitely more power? Why hasn't any other antagonist used magic? These are the kind of questions I'm forced to ask when you introduce such broad topics without any thought, show. You did a bad.
Because Rick's incredibly arrogant, and therefore he would not give up the very thing he spent his life pursuing, even if a more convenient alternative to it were to arise. This is basic characterization.
Not only since the whole thing could have been avoided by Rick having some basic sense and reading Morty's obvious body language, something you'd think the smartest man in the universe could pick up on.
And we can add perfect understanding of body language to the list of things Just Stop has arbitrarily decided is related to intelligence. Anyway, that's all I want to cover, so final thoughts? Just Stop did not understand Rick and Morty. I don't know what else to say. Good night and good luck.